Welcome to the story world.
Nestled in the foothills of the mountains, that village was as abundant in natural beauty as life there was arduous. It was a small hamlet, encircled by towering mountains and dense forests. Living there was a boy named John. John's family was destitute, yet his heart was as pure as gold. He lived with his ailing mother in a humble little hut within the village. Poverty had forced him to mature beyond his years, yet not a single furrow of worry ever creased his face. His daily routine began with the very first rays of the sun. Every day he would venture into the forest to gather dry firewood, which he would then sell at the market to purchase medicine for his mother and provisions for their home. As he traversed the rugged, uneven paths of the forest, he would often converse with the birds and gently caress the trees. He knew that it was this very forest that sustained both him and his mother. It was the height of summer, and the sun blazed down with scorching intensity. One sweltering afternoon, John was making his way back, bearing a heavy bundle of firewood balanced upon his head. His throat was parched and bone-dry from thirst. Just then, John noticed an elderly man sitting beneath a banyan tree. The old man's eyes were sunken deep into their sockets, and he appeared frail and weak. John approached him. In a trembling voice, the old man spoke.
"Son, do you happen to have any food? I haven't eaten a thing in 3 days."
John paused for a moment. He too was tormented by hunger. John felt a pang of deep sorrow. He glanced into his satchel, but found nothing inside save for a single piece of dry bread, the meager meal he had set aside for his own dinner that night. He thought to himself,
"If I give this away, I will go hungry."
With that thought weighing on his mind, he hesitated for a moment, then continued on his way. He felt that if he went hungry, he might not be able to muster the strength to chop wood the next day. Yet his conscience reproached him. He had walked only a few steps when, a short distance further on, he saw a young deer trapped in the bushes, writhing in the throes of thirst. John had only 2 sips of water left in his bottle. He thought to himself once more,
"This is meant for my own thirst."
And with a heavy heart he moved on. The instinct for self-preservation was outweighing his compassion, yet nature continued to test him time and again. Just then he noticed a strange commotion at the roadside. As he walked, John saw a man standing in distress beside his bullock cart. A wheel of his cart had broken, and he needed dry wood to build a fire, specifically to heat the iron parts required to repair the wheel. The man was a wealthy merchant from the city, but deep within the forest, all his riches were useless. All he needed was the very wood that John was carrying on his head. John looked at the wood, the fruit of hours of his labor. If he gave this wood away, he would have to venture back into the depths of the forest. But witnessing the man's helplessness, John's heart melted. Without a moment's hesitation, John handed over the wood he had worked so hard to gather. The man was overjoyed. He said,
"You have helped me immensely. Here, take this as a reward: fresh bread, fruit, and a pitcher of cool water."
As soon as John held the food and cool water in his hands, he felt a sense of shame regarding his earlier hesitation. He realized that nature had repaid him tenfold for his small act of kindness. Now, John had an abundance of food and water. He immediately thought of the old man and the deer. He turned and ran back. He fed the old man a hearty meal and with his own hands gave water to a deer. A sparkle of blessing shone in the old man's eyes. Placing his hand upon the boy's head, the old man bestowed his blessings, while the deer, leaping with joy, vanished into the forest. Time passed, and John's reputation as a compassionate boy spread far and wide. A few weeks later, John ventured up a high mountain in search of rare timber. That day, the clouds hung low, enveloping the peaks. The slopes were slick with moss. Suddenly, his foot slipped and he tumbled hundreds of feet down into a deep ravine. The spot was so remote and treacherous that people rarely ever ventured there.
Help! Is anyone there?
John cried out, but his voice merely echoed and faded away amidst the mountains. His leg was broken and his body was covered in deep wounds. As the sun began to set, fear of wild beasts made John's heart sink. He was unable to move even an inch. Helpless, he gazed up at the sky. He realized with despair that his mother would now be left to struggle for her medicines and daily rations. His eyes began to droop. Yet an act of compassion is never in vain. Just then, the very same old man, who was in truth a skilled healer, happened to be passing by. He heard the sound of John groaning in pain. He was an old man, but he carried a long, sturdy rope. Acting with presence of mind, he lowered the rope down the ravine. Then, summoning some villagers, they hauled John back up to safety. The healer immediately recognized the boy as the very one who had once saved his life. In the darkness of the night, while everyone stood trembling with fear, a wondrous event unfolded. John lay on the ground, writhing and groaning in agony. At that very moment, the same deer, the one John had once given water to, arrived at the scene. Using its keen sense of smell, the deer discovered a magical herb deep within the forest, one capable of healing wounds instantly. The deer brought these leaves and placed them before John. The Vaidya was left astonished. He took the leaves into his hands. The old man ground the leaves and applied the paste to John's wounds. The moment the poultice was applied, John felt a cool sensation, and his pain began to subside. This was nature repaying a kindness that she was returning to her friend. A few days later, John had fully recovered. He was no longer alone. Whenever he went into the forest, that deer would come to him and play, and the old man would help him find the finest wood. That elderly healer had now become John's guide. John's poverty now began to gradually fade away, for he now possessed both knowledge and true friends. One evening, as he and his mother sat outside their hut, John, with tears welling up in his eyes, said,
"Today, I realized that the seed of kindness never goes to waste. I had offered only a small act of help, yet in return, the forest saved my life."
This story teaches us the fruit of compassion. Kindness shown to others is never in vain. It returns to serve as a protective shield during times of crisis. Selfless service, helping others, even when one is in need oneself, is the true essence of humanity. Connection with nature. If we protect voiceless animals and the environment, they too will stand by us when the time comes.
Please share, subscribe, and comment. Also press the bell icon.